There we go. Now we're on. Okay, we're here in Crestview with Wayne Whitman, a longtime band director in the Panhandle. So, Wayne, we're here to talk with you a little bit. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up and how you first got interested in music.
Well, I grew up in Lynette, Alabama, and my father was in bands, school bands in the 20s.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
And he played valve trombone and tuba, and so he would play around the house when I was a young kid, and then I got started in high school band in a small town. You took 1 year beginning band, and then you went into the high school band.
Mm-hmm.
And John Kendrick was my high school band director, a great influence on me.
Mm-hmm.
And but I started teaching when I was about 6 years old. I started hanging around the swimming pool. And actually they paid me a little money to pick up candy wrappers and do whatever I was capable, and I worked my entire through my high school career. Actually, that paid for a lot of my college. And Ken Avenger was a football coach and ran the pool, and he would let me help with swimming lessons.
Now, was that a city pool?
Yes.
Okay.
And I started teaching swimming, helping out, and then I had kind of advanced there teaching-wise. And then when I got in the high school band, my band room was about 3 blocks from the school. It was behind the gym. And we had band first period, and then we'd get in our cars and go to school for the rest of the day.
How are we doing?
And so
the band room wasn't attached to the school?
No, it wasn't on campus.
I'll be darned.
But there was just a one building
Mm-hmm.
school for all 12th grades.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was good friends with the band secretary, a student, and sometimes she'd call me in as absent, and I'd spend all day in the band room with John Kendrick teaching beginners. So that got me real excited about that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to College Conservatory of Music, University of Cincinnati.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
And
What made you decide to go there?
well, my senior year in high school, Mr. Kendrick left and went to Columbus, Georgia, and was high school band director there. And he called me one day and said, "Man from Cincinnati Conservatory is here to try out trumpet, so get down here." I had nothing prepared other than things I had done.
Mm-hmm.
And went down and auditioned, and got a scholarship there.
Wow.
And so I went to Cincinnati,
Mm-hmm.
and stayed there 2 years. And even though I was on scholarship, I ran out of money.
Mm-hmm.
Came back home and worked in the cotton mill for 2 years.
Hmm.
And after working in the cotton mill and coming out with cotton all over my hair, I knew I wanted to finish school.
Mm-hmm.
And I had gone to band camp at Alabama with Colonel Butler for a lot of years when I was in school.
Mm-hmm.
And that got me excited about Alabama. So after I worked 2 years, I went on to Alabama and finished my bachelor's there and started teaching in Alabama.
Where in Alabama did you start?
Well, I taught 2 places in Alabama. I started at Tuscaloosa Junior High
Okay.
and taught 2 years there, and then there was an opening in Birmingham at Mountain Brook High School, So I spent 10 years at Mountain Brook High School.
Hmm.
And then I had some health problems, so I stayed out of teaching a few years. And then came down with a music store here in Florida with Jim Leonard.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, one of my better friends was already here, Ernest Epson.
Mm-hmm.
And we had known each other at Alabama. And I used to go to Ernest's rehearsal. He was a little older than me. He'll appreciate that. But we used to go to Ernest's night rehearsals and
Mm-hmm.
watch his rehearsals, and learned a lot there. And he had fantastic bands there, small town.
Yes, he did.
And so anyhow, I've known Ernest for a lot of years, and he called me and said, "Hey, there's a horn peddling job here at the music store. Come on down." So I came down and talked with Jim Leonard and decided to sell horns for a few years, and then missed teaching so bad that I decided that I needed to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I taught here in Okaloosa County for 25 years.
Now, what job did you get in Okaloosa first?
At
Teaching?
Lewis Junior High.
Lewis.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
I was there 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of started the program. Well, actually I followed Jeff Adams, but he had just kind of gotten the program going. It was a disaster when Jeff came in, and he had gotten it going a little bit, and so when I left, we had about 150 kids in the program. The school had 400 kids.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a significant population. And taught there, and then a situation came open, and they were building a new school in Destin. And but the school wasn't ready, so I went to Bruner with Jim Dodd,
Mm-hmm.
and taught there 2 years as his assistant with the idea I was going to take the kids from his school that moved to Destin, and that would be a smoother transition.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of things happened there. The new principal at Destin was a little bit, shall I say, well, she was inefficient is what she was.
Mm-hmm.
And as a matter of fact, she lasted about 6 months after the school opened. She didn't have desk ordered, equipment ordered. And
Oh my goodness.
after dealing with her, I knew that wasn't quite what I wanted. So at the same time in Okaloosa County, Richburg Middle School in Crestview opened up.
Mm-hmm.
They had opened a new school in Crestview, and David Mayfield, who was at Richburg, went to the new school, and I went to Richburg.
I remember David.
Yeah. So I finished my 10 years here at Richburg and retired.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, just been enjoying life, traveling.
Retirement's wonderful, isn't it?
Yeah, oh, it certainly is. I recommend it.
Thinking back over your career, did you face any major challenges that you had to overcome?
Well,
I mean, what were the things that really challenged you?
Well, a couple of things. One, at high school, I think the marching band really was a challenge for me.
Mm-hmm.
I had not had a lot of experience with marching band, and going to Cincinnati, obviously, we weren't
Right.
too involved.
That's right.
And I was still debating whether to pursue a playing career or teaching, and of course I had the teaching bug in me, but it took the performance end of it for me to make that decision. And I did a little sub work with the Cincinnati Symphony.
Wow.
My teacher was Gene Blee, who was principal trumpet with the Cincinnati Symphony, and so they did a couple of things that they needed extra trumpets. So Mr. Blee got me involved with that, and I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
But I just couldn't get rid of the teaching bug.
Yeah.
So and ran out of money, and came back home to Alabama and worked, and made enough money and finished at Alabama. I got my bachelor's, and 10 years later I got my master's.
Now, were you in the $1 Million Band?
Yes, sir, with Colonel Butler.
That's a great experience.
Oh, yes, it was wonderful. And we had two professors there, Colonel Butler and Yale Ellis. I don't know if you're
Who's that?
Yale Ellis.
Yale Ellis. I've heard that name, but I never have met him.
He was band director at Sidney Lanier High School in Montgomery.
Ah,
for a lot of years.
That's how I know the name.
As a matter of fact, the band director that followed him at Lanier was John Law.
Really?
Yes.
Johnny Law?
Yes.
I'll be darned.
So, but Mr. Ellis had been through the rigmarole, and I tell you, the classes I took with Mr. Ellis, he would say, now here's what the book says. Now let me tell you what works.
Mm-hmm.
And he was so practical.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, the neat thing is, when I first started teaching at Tuscaloosa Junior High, I'd have a problem, and I'd come home at night and call Mr. Ellis and say, Mr. Ellis, what I do?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, do this and do that. So I was a genius. And the only smart thing I did was call him.
Well, that is smart.
Yeah. But that's kind of
So the
path.
marching band was a challenge.
Yeah, the marching band, and as I continued work, dealing with everything except teaching kids and music.
Mm-hmm.
The outside distractions, which is something you have to do, and a significant amount of time is spent there.
That's right.
But
More so today than
exactly.
when you and I were teaching.
And you know, for younger band directors coming up, deal with it. Do the best you can at it.
Mm-hmm.
But don't forget and don't lose your passion for what's important,
Mm-hmm.
and that's teaching children and teaching music.
Right.
You know, I would see people do the marching band, and they were talking about this wonderful show and all this, and the flags and all this, and they're important. Don't get me wrong. However, their band didn't sound very good, and you're thinking, wait a minute. None of that's important if the band sounds bad.
That's right. Exactly right.
And so, you know, a friend of mine, Rodney Dassinger, used to say, the way I judge marching bands, I close my eyes. Well, there's some truth in that.
Mm-hmm.
First thing you better do is listen to
It's
it,
got to sound good. That's right.
because nothing else is important until that's there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing about Ernest Hipson's marching bands. They never lost that beautiful band,
That's right.
rich band, warm sound,
That's right.
even on the field. And yes, it was a little brighter, but still, and they always played good music.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing I hear band directors all the time say, you know, there's just not any music, and they play a lot of stuff that doesn't have any meat on it.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, my bands, the better music I passed out, the better my bands sound.
That's right.
Isn't that amazing?
It is. It's the truth.
Yes, because if there's nothing there,
That's right.
I don't care how well you play it, there's still nothing there.
Exactly right.
And you know, I would tell my students, the fundamentals of basic sound, tone quality. My beginning bands were always some of the slowest moving beginning bands, and I'd hear band directors, brag about, well, we got through 4 books this year, man. Well, but they didn't sound very good.
Mm-hmm.
So, I always try to teach my kids, I don't care how well you play the instrument, if it's ugly, nobody wants to hear it.
That's right.
And that's if it's a beautiful sound, the other will come.
Exactly right.
So you can't lose focus on what's important.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the challenge of being a band director, is never losing that focus and your passion about music and band sound.
Right.
And then the other will work. And for some reason, they never learn, some of band directors, that once you get the tone and fundamentals of counting and this kind of thing in place, the progression can be fast.
That's right.
But you have to go slow with the fundamentals of tone production, and that has to be there.
That's right.
And that's what's important to me. So that's kind of the challenges, and hopefully some of the things that I tried to keep in mind to help overcome some of those.
Mm-hmm. During your teaching career, were there any pivotal moments where you realized that, hey, I haven't been doing that, I need to do this, or?
Well, I guess just a very few times in my career that we have a performance that was so special that this is what it's for.
Mm-hmm.
One time at State Festival in Alabama, we played, I believe it was a Tchaikovsky thing, and at the end of the performance, I turned around to bow, and the audience was standing, and the judges were standing, and I turned around and looked at the kids. Tears were coming down their cheeks. Tears were coming down my cheeks.
Isn't that great?
And you think, this is what it's all about.
Mm-hmm.
This is the experience that you just can't get anywhere else.
That's right.
And did I achieve it every performance? No.
No.
Unfortunately.
A lot of us don't.
But the striving to get that is so worthwhile and wonderful.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
But just the passion, and see the passion in the kids. And
well, see, you had an advantage too, and a good advantage, in that you were working for a music company for a while.
exactly.
So you were getting into band rooms all over this area, and you saw some really good models.
That was a great teaching tool, both positively and negatively.
Right.
What not to do and what to do.
Exactly.
I know watching Ernest Hepson, you'd watch one of his rehearsals, and now the band would sound great, but you'd think, well, he's just a band director. But you watch 1 month of his rehearsals, and you think, my goodness, that man is so consistent.
Mm-hmm.
That the consistency with which he taught is just phenomenal. I've never seen anybody like that.
Mm-hmm.
And just to watch Ernest. And I learned a lot from Tom Fitzpatrick.
Mm-hmm.
Tom and I used to spend a lot of evenings sitting and listening to tapes, and he'd listen to mine and go, and I'd listen to his, and we'd critique each other, and that's another thing. I think band directors are so afraid to have people in because they're afraid somebody's going to find out that they don't know something.
Right.
Well, the word was already out. I didn't know anything.
I don't believe that.
So I certainly wasn't bashful about asking for help.
Yeah.
And
You know, I always found that when you had somebody come in, it's not necessarily what they did, but it allowed you to be off the podium in the back of the room maybe, and you heard your band in an entirely different light.
exactly, and plus your kids, it's kind of kids listening to the parents. After a while, goes in one ear and out the other.
Exactly.
And they could say that somebody else could say the same things. Oh, I didn't know that. Well, you didn't. You hear it every day. But
That's the truth.
Just somebody else saying it.
Oliver Hobbs used to make me so mad when I was teaching in Tallahassee at Rickards, and he would come over and do a rehearsal for me.
Yes.
Every once in a while, he'd come over, and he'd get up on the podium and he'd hitch up his pants and
Wipe his brow.
wipe his brow, and he'd start conducting. He didn't say a word, and the band sounded like it was ready for state festival.
Yes, sir.
And he didn't say a word. All he did was get on the podium and do all that stuff he did,
Mm-hmm.
and then they played like fabulous, and it used to make me so mad.
Yeah, I got the privilege of watching Oliver when I was working with a music store.
Mhm.
Jim Leonard had hired Oliver to come over and travel around and listen to some bands, and I'd carry him around. So I'd watch him, and that's exactly the miracles that would happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then he'd get in my car and he'd say, "Whit, you don't think I was too critical, do you?" And he never said an unkind word.
I know.
It was just amazing what the man could do.
Yeah, he was amazing. Who were your musical heroes? All through your life, who did you
Well,
aspire to be?
I started off listening. I was kind of a weird kid because I would listen to classical music.
Mm-hmm.
All my friends would go out and listen to this, that, and the other, and I just didn't. And so the Chicago Symphony, Herseth, and then my teacher at Cincinnati, Gene Blee.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the people I wanted to emulate.
Yeah.
And then watching Leonard Bernstein in his TV programs,
Young people's
young people's things, and they were so educational, but they were so inspiring.
They were.
And I wish we had more of that kind of thing now.
I do too.
Those were my heroes. Just great conductors and great players.
Mm-hmm. Now, thinking about young people in the business now, I think we're in good hands, by the way.
I do too.
We have a lot of really talented young people out there. What advice do you have for them?
Well, a number of things. A couple of things I've touched on already, but get advice. Be smart in who you get advice from.
Mm-hmm.
But there's an awful lot of wealth of talent that we have, older, that don't be afraid to ask somebody in
Mm-hmm.
and say, "Help, what do I do here? Help me, show me." And I think that's the biggest thing. And don't ever forget teaching fundamentals of tone production. Band sound, if it's beautiful, everything else kind of falls into place.
Sure.
So don't get lost in everything else and forget what's important. And teaching kids, educating children, and music. That's why we're there.
That's right.
I'd like to, if I could, read a letter I got from a student.
Sure, absolutely.
And this is why we teach. Dear Mr. Whitman, over the years I've had plenty of music instructors, from band directors to professors to private lesson instructors. They've all had huge contributions to the progress I've made, not only as a musician, but as a future music educator. However, out of all the people I've had the opportunity to work with, you continue to stand out. You're simply the best music instructor I've ever been blessed to work with. I was a normal middle school student back then. I didn't understand responsibility or commitment or determination. I always had things come easy to me up until the day I stepped in your band room. I remember being the only student in the whole beginning woodwinds class who didn't attend summer session. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I remember being absolutely lost. And I remembered you expected a lot from us. Well, more so demanded from us. I didn't understand why. The first day when I said I wanted to play flute, I remember you telling me no. Your reasoning had something to do with the way my upper lip was shaped. I was so mad I didn't want to play clarinet because it looked hard. All the buttons really intimidated me, and I didn't think I was capable of doing well. But it grew on me. I was awful the first few weeks, but I steadily moved up on chair placement because of your test. I was focused on moving up to chairs that I didn't realize I was actually getting better. Practice was actually helping. Who would have thought, but I never understood why. I remember the day that you would get so frustrated with us because we weren't watching your conducting, or we were playing wrong notes, or you could absolutely tell we weren't practicing. Let's see. I'm just kind of skipping here. You believed in us. You knew that we had so much more potential than flipping burgers at local McDonald's. You found the very good in every person, and you forced us to find the good in each other. We were forced out of our shells into a world where we were vulnerable, and we grew as human beings. I managed to learn responsibility and commitment while having the integrity to own up to my mistakes. I learned my communication skill to be accepting of others no matter how terrible the oboe sounded on beginning oboes. You were always that grumpy old band director who always found something to nag on us for. But you were the best person for the job. You loved your students and your job, no matter how awful we were. You're my favorite teacher because you had that love for us. It's hard to find good educators, the ones that care more about students' welfare more than their paycheck. I can honestly say without a doubt that I have become the young woman I am today because you planted that seed one day in beginning band. I'm a successful undergraduate student in one of the top music schools in the nation, FSU.
Yay!
I am taught by some of the best clarinet specialists in the state, and I have some of the most intuitive and inspirational colleagues around. I'm in a professional music sorority and National Association for Music Educators. I'm on my way to becoming a successful young woman with degree in sight and head full of dreams. And it all started with you. And yet, while a simple thank you would never be enough, I thank you from the very bottom of my heart. Today I can stand here confidently and be proud of the progress I've made. When I'm asked who my role model is, my answer is and always will be you. I can only hope that one day I can have the opportunity to give my students the same care and devotion that you gave to us.
And I bet she will too,
You bet.
because she's had a good teacher.
Yes, and she just loves it. And but that's what it's all about.
That's exactly what it's all about.
And this is so insightful. You don't hear this from too many young people.
No, you don't.
And boy, what a perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So that young lady is going somewhere.
That's for sure.
But anyhow, that's kind of
Well, that's a lot of advice right there for young people.
oh, you bet. You bet.
That's right.
But Also, own up to your mistakes. And I do have a funny story.
Good.
That Tom Fitzpatrick, he was at Niceville High School, and I was at Lewis, and his assistant, Mike Farr, was, I had him over to help me judge flag trials. That was when we were junior high and still marching band. So we were watching this little girl, and they had their judges' sheets in front of them, and this little girl, God bless her, we'd give her facing movements, and she was screwing herself into the ground. I mean, she would turn around 3 times, and Mike got tickled and put his score sheet in front of him. You could hear him go. Well, Tom got tickled. Well, he turned and walked away, and behind us was a set of trash cans at the school. So Tom went over and looked in the trash can so she wouldn't see him giggle. Well, I knew I couldn't laugh in front of the little girl, and I turned around to tie my shoes, except I had on loafers. And we still laugh about that. But the more important thing about this is, I felt so bad. But I immediately went to my principal and said, let me tell you what happened and what I did. And you probably going to have her parents come in. And I'll apologize. I was stupid. I didn't want the little girl to feel bad, but we just couldn't help it. And actually, the little girl never realized it. Thank goodness. And
she was so focused on her moves
yes,
that she didn't pay attention to you.
Exactly. And my point about the whole thing is this, and it is funny, but in a way, when you make a mistake, you better talk to your school administrators,
right, and
say, hey, I messed up. Here's what I did. What I need to do, and everybody does dumb things.
Now that's the best advice I've heard.
Well,
I hope people listen to this and take that to heart.
That is important.
It really is.
And I still do dumb things.
No.
But, the neat thing is,
and kids respect that.
Certainly.
I used to tell my band when I was teaching high school, that if they got a superior, it's because they worked hard.
Yes.
And if we got a 2, it's because I didn't do my job.
That's right. Well, being in Alabama, I'm a big Bear Bryant proponent. And he used to say, if we won a ball game, it was the kids' fault. If we didn't, it's my fault. And I read a lot of Bear Bryant and things that he did and what have you, and learned a lot about leading people. And I was there when he was there at Alabama, and of course he could have run for governor or anything else.
That's right.
But it's kind of like Bobby Bowden at FSU.
Yeah.
But you learn from all these people. Listen to people, but when you make a mistake, admit it. Then try to figure out what you can do to fix it.
That's right. Well, Whit, this has been a wonderful conversation.
Well, I've enjoyed it, and
we appreciate all your years of service and all the wonderful students you've taught.
Well, it's been fun. I still do some judging and clinicking bands.
Me too.
And enjoy it. But
well, keep at it.
I do what I want to, and I'm retired. When I don't want to, I don't do it. So it's fun. thank you for coming over, and I appreciate FBA, and Bentley, I appreciate what you do for
Well, thank you.
FBA.
Thank you very much.